Welcome, welcome, welcome to Beyond the Devices, Digital Equity in EdTech. So not just the device, but we're going beyond the devices. So digital equity in EdTech. What the amazing Dr. Sarah Thomas. I always say, if you don't know Dr. Thomas, are you even in education? Like, what have you been doing for all of your years? Are you under a rock? What's happening? So we are going to get to the session I am excited about today, but you may be like, with Desiree, who are you? Who are you, woman? I'm here to see Dr. Sarah. I know. Calm down. I'm Dr. Desiree Alexander, and I am the host of Today. I am the founder and CEO of Educator Alexander, and here are all the ways that you can contact me. I always let you know that if you're watching us on the YouTube channel, hey y'all. And if you're watching us on the YouTube channel, no, you do not get a certificate of attendance, but you do get the knowledge. And underneath the video in the description, you will see the resource for today. So definitely go ahead and pick that up. What do we have coming up next? We have me talking about Pebble Go. So the Pebble Go webinar is October 22nd. There's a different link to register, but it's still a Zoom link, and you can still find it on my website. So everything I talk about is at edalex.net/events. So definitely come and see what is up. It's really just talking about how you can blend what you're already doing in the classroom with any kind of reading and articles and a lot of non-fiction stuff and fiction ebooks and just all kinds of stuff that you can use. So definitely come and see us. And then we have Spark Curiosity in Kids with Google Vids. And I know a lot of people are like, I know Vids came out, but I don't know what all this is doing. I don't have time to look at this. Well, Joy Blake, who is a friend of EA Webinar, this probably like her 12th webinar with us throughout all of the years. She's going to come and tell us what is Google Vids, how do you use it to unleash storytelling, enhance learning, and streamline communication. This is probably going to be the last webinar for 2025. Tear. But I'm already scheduling for 2026. We already have a couple of them in the works. So I'm excited to release the 2026 spring schedule a little bit later this year. So next year, TCEA, if you plan on going to TCEA, so we have at least one person from Texas. Hopefully I will see you there. But TCA is one of the largest, or it is the largest state conference that's not like ISTE and FETC. So definitely come and check me out. I'll be there. Come say hi. Come give me a hug. So there you go. I'm also going to be at IdeaCon. I don't have that graphic up just yet, but I will be at IdeaCon in the Chicago area, so I'll be there as well. And then we always have our self-paced courses. You can get Google certification and educational leadership certification help, or just talk to me about what's going on. That's support time. You can just say, hey, I need help with this. I have support time almost every week with people. So it's kind of cool to see different businesses being done, and I need help with this tech tool or whatever it may be. Ooh, you may say, Desiree, that was kind of quick. I couldn't write it down. That's okay. Everything is at edalex.net/events. And guess what? I want to know what you want to know. So let me know what webinars you want to see. Also, if you want to present, y'all, we have first time presenters. I help them out. I make sure that they're comfortable to present. They have a nice video at the end of it. And I have presenters that's been doing this forever and ever. They're international presenters. They go all the time. I have the gambit. So I love it. If you just have something in your heart that you want to share with educators, I'm for it. So let's go. So on this link, you can just tell me both. I want to hear about this or I want to teach this. Let us know. Woo! All right. Now I can breathe because guess what? I'm about to learn some stuff about digital equity beyond the devices. I'm ready to go. So let's get started.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Desiree. It is so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm super excited to connect with everybody on the topic of digital equity, which is absolutely one of my favorites. So just to tell a little bit about me before we dive in, I have been in education for 21 years. And during that time, I have taught every grade level from 1st to 12th, as well as a master's of Edtech program. In addition, I am founder and CEO of an organization called EduMatch, which connects educators around the world to learn and grow together. We'll touch on that a little bit in the session. We're not going to get too deep into it. We're going to keep our focus mainly on the topic du jour, which is digital equity. So going to go ahead and kick it off. And we're going to get to our very first slides. So, digital equity. If I were to ask you what is digital equity, then you could go ahead and drop in chat what you define digital equity as. And it's okay if you are new to the topic, if you're just like, I don't know what the heck that is, and that is quite all right as well. You could go ahead and just drop whatever your personal definition, what you think digital equity is. But in the meantime, I am going to share very simply a definition that I got from Dr. Avril Smart Goggins. She said that digital equity means digital transformation for all. So when we're thinking about our students and what they're doing, digitally, electronically, then we want to provide those transformational learning experiences. So thank you so much for being vulnerable in the chat. I have my chat open on my cell phone right here. You might be able to see it. So I am checking in to see what y'all are saying. But digital equity is basically digital transformation for all. And I want to emphasize that word all, or as Jenny McGarrett says, each. So each student, each person would have that digital transformation. So we're not looking at like the whole mass, moving the needle for the whole mass. While that is something great to do, we need to look individually at each of our students and make that transformation opportunity available for them using digital tools or really any tools at our disposal. So I've been talking about this for a very long time. I actually co-wrote a book series through ISTE about digital equity back in 2017, I want to say, is when we started writing the series, and they were published in 2018 and 2019. But this topic is one that has resurfaced for me. It's never really gone away, as it's always been a passion area. I've always been passionate about getting our students what they need in order to be successful. But definitely it has resurfaced, especially this year. It's been right in our faces because the landscape has changed significantly, as I'm sure that you all have seen. So here is an article from 2025, May 2025, where it talks about how the federal government began terminating digital equity grant funds for states. And this is a big deal. Because our students are no longer getting what they need to be successful. There are some reports that were saying that the administration called the programs racist and illegal before they pulled billions intended for devices, broadband, and literacy for our students. So really, who's getting hurt by this? It is our students, and that is who we are here to support as educators. So a little more on this. Simultaneously, in April, then there were 21 states that enacted legislation or policies restricting DEI efforts. And as you know, the E in DEI stands for equity. So in heartening news, there were 25 states that declined to sign onto that executive order, but that is the reality where we are right now. So in the time that I personally have been invested in digital equity, then we have seen kind of like a whiplash. We were making a lot of progress, and then now all of a sudden things are stopping, things are drying up, funds are going away, support is going away for our students. So equity never stopped mattering, but the fight just got more urgent. So this is why I wanted to reach out to Dr. Desiree to see if I could present this topic today on this webinar, because despite everything that we have going on around us, then we can't give up on our students. We need to fight for our students, and the power that we have collectively as educators, we have so much power if we come together. So I just really wanted to continue to generate that groundswell to continue fighting for our students. So let's dig into what exactly digital equity is. So a lot of times when you say that phrase digital equity and you think about it, then some think of access to devices or bandwidth. And you might have heard the phrase the homework gap, which has been very, very popular. Some people think of access to funding, but we cannot stop there. Don't make that mistake of stopping there. Digital equity includes so much more than just that. For example, there are access to opportunities, including those for transformational learning. So you see that golden door there. That golden door represents the transformation. In addition, access to high quality education, making sure that each student can receive that high quality education. Now, I went to a workshop put on by an organization that I work closely with from time to time called Future Ready. So you all may have heard of that. And this workshop was actually several years ago. This was, thinking back, this was 7 years ago, 7 years ago. And we had this workshop where they asked us to brainstorm in small groups what we thought that learning would look like in 5 years. And you see what our group came up with. I'm not going to read everything to you, but I realized at one point during the pandemic, when I was asked to do a keynote on digital equity, and I used the same graphic, that many of these things had actually come true during the pandemic. Like, look at that anytime, anywhere learning, that remote learning, right? Um, you might see that now some educators, some schools, some districts have kind of regressed back to the paper and pencil learning. However, we now in many areas have the capacity to go more transformational with our learning. So we do have the capacity to do that anytime, anywhere learning, as we found out 5 years ago, right? We also had the self-driven global collaboration and learning back in 2018. That was starting to emerge. We were starting to see schools and districts and classrooms connect with others outside of their local geographic area. You would see things like mystery Skypes, mystery Hangouts. You would have projects such as EdCamp Global, EdChange Global Classrooms, things of that nature. But now that students have more devices, now that the internet has become more ubiquitous, you have it in more places, then we absolutely have the infrastructure to support most of these things that we had brainstormed back in 2018. So I want to give a quick shout out to my friends Adam Juarez and Kat Goyet. They are in California. They are a married couple and they do a lot of collaboration together. And I was fortunate to attend one of their sessions back in 2018. So nobody can really predict the future, but we can always take a lesson from the past. So here are some trends that they pointed out in this presentation: the Fortune 500's list of most valued skills from 1970 to today. So that is spanning 55 years. Or if you want to be more accurate, I saw this in 2018, so it was spanning 48 at the time. But let's take a look at it, right? In 1970, then you can see on the left-hand column what the skills were. Where you look at today, what the top skills were. So in chat, if you want to just drop any ahas or reflections or anything that you see that kind of pops out to you, what are some things that you would notice within the two lists? Does anything surprise you? Has anything changed? And one thing that I want to mention, a lot of times people say, oh, writing and organization and stuff like that's at the bottom. Actually, no, this is still a list of the most valued skills. So these are the 13 most valued skills out of all of the skills in the world. You know, you have hundreds of thousands of skills. So don't think for a second that this is saying that writing and reading is not important anymore. But if you have any ahas, go ahead and drop them in the chat. While you are doing that, then I just want to mention that a lot of the topics on the left-hand side, you tended to have classes around them. You tended to have like writing, right? You'd have writing class or oral and written skills. Computation, you know, we have our math classes. Reading, we have our reading classes, things of that nature. However, when you look at the top 3 soft skills of today, the teamwork, the problem solving, the interpersonal, there's typically not courses around there. And if they are, then they are pretty rare. So one of the solutions that we can do as educators is to integrate these seamlessly within our content. So just think about that for a second while I play this next video. Okay, I might not play all of this because this is kind of a long video, but it's a good one. Okay, so you might be familiar with this, and just let me know in the chat if you all have seen this. But just take a quick look at this video that I think does a beautiful job of explaining digital equity. Okay, so I'm gonna pause that video right there just for the sake of time, but I suggest that you go check out the whole version because it's very powerful. At the end, the parents get a little emotional because they recognize that this video is really a reality that a lot of people are living. So absolutely, I agree with what Dr. Desiree said. The video kind of chokes me up every time. So it's the reality that our students are facing. So really wanted to air that. So in the context of 2025 and today's society, then please drop a one in the chat if any of these resonate with you. Right now, you might be feeling a certain way. You might be navigating restrictive policies. You might be feeling stuck in device checklists, and you might be carrying the work without support. Just wanted to let you know that you are not alone. So these are our daily realities. A lot of times, when you look at nationwide, just knowing that you're not alone, that a lot of other educators are facing this challenge. But your presence here signals that you're looking for solutions and not surrender. So truly, truly, I am honored to have you here. Okay. All right. So with that being said, we're going to talk about three different things today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is opportunities. So digital equity, again, includes access to opportunities. So you see the person knocking. Also, access to high quality teaching. But first, we should start with the elephant in the room, because devices, bandwidth, funding, these are all things that are part of digital equity, but they're not the only thing that defines digital equity. So let's go ahead and get started with devices and bandwidth. So there was this great study that was done by Rideout and Katz that looked at what students ages 6 to 13 do at home with technology. And when they surveyed these students, they found that 94% of the families surveyed reported having the internet access. However, and this is a big however, the type of access varied. There were a lot of different things. For example, when you started looking at families who had lower incomes, then a lot of them relied on mobile only internet access. So that is like using your cell phone, and that is your only form of access to the internet. And I'm sure that many of us have had the experience of trying to type long form content on a cell phone. It just is not the same as doing it on a computer or on a on a device that is designed for that. So many families also experienced interruptions to their internet service. So they did not have consistent access. And another challenge included slow access, sharing devices between multiple members of the household, and having service cut off because of non-payment. But with that being said, when they looked at what the students actually did and they compared students across the board from all socioeconomic levels, then they found that students were motivated to use the internet for similar reasons at home. So there was no significant difference across social economic status. However, the outcomes might be very different. So we're just going to dive in a little bit. I'm going to share my story. Like I shared with you at the beginning, I have taught every grade from 1st to 12th, as well as the master's in Edtech program. But my last appointment was at a high school. So I was briefly in a high school. And prior to that, I was teaching middle school English and technology. So we're going to actually bring it back that far. So this is my story. You can even begin this easily. So I was at a conference back in the 2010s, and I learned about a concept called flipped classroom, which is basically when you preload the content. So you give students maybe videos or something to read, and it has the content for what you're going to teach in class, and that helps you to transform your time so that in class you can actually support them while they're doing. So I really wanted to try that with my students, and so I gave them this form to fill out in the classroom, and I asked them if they had access. Now, looking back at this form, this question was not a great question. Knowing now what I knew back then do you have internet access at home? I would have probably asked them, what kind of internet access do they have? Do they have a computer at home? Do they have to share their device between multiple members of the family, or do they have their own device? How often is the internet on? All of those things that we talked about at the beginning of this section. But this was a start. And you know better, you do better. That's what Maya Angelou said. So when I gave the survey, out of my 47 students who took it, then 2 of them said no. And so that bothered me, because I was just like, I cannot just, do this flipped classroom activity with all of my students when 2 of them clearly do not have internet access. So at this point, my brain started going. I started brainstorming for different solutions. And one of the things is that I realized that we had a Chromebook cart that we were sharing on our floor. So um, sometimes when I wanted to flip my classroom, then what I would do is that I would check out the Chromebooks and we would use the devices in class. Another solution that helped is that while the students said that they did not all have internet access, then all of them said that they had a way to watch DVDs at home. So whether it was a computer without internet access or a game console or something of that nature, then they were able to watch DVDs. So I got a spindle of about 200 blank DVDs, and I would just burn the videos onto DVDs. I would make about maybe 5 or 10 for anyone who wanted to take one home. And so that was a way to also get the content. But my absolute favorite one was viewing parties. So I covered the faces for privacy, but these students are now all in their 20s. You know, they're all grown adults now, but still, they deserve their privacy. So we had viewing parties. Everyone was invited. So it didn't matter if you had access to Wi-Fi at home or if you did not. Everyone was invited to the viewing party, and folks would come up uh, during lunchtime. They would bring their lunch. We would watch the short video, and then they would have the rest of the time to socialize with their friends. So that was a really cool way for me to be able to connect with my students and kind of chat with them, socialize with them, but also to ensure that they all got the content that they needed for our lesson. So in my role as classroom teacher, these were some of the solutions that worked for me. COSIN is an organization that addresses digital equity, and they created a digital equity toolkit. They identified 9 strategies that leaders in all roles could do to help promote digital equity. The first 5 were addressed to school districts, and the last 4 were targeting school leaders. So a few of these, I'll just go very quickly through these. So Fairfax County Public Schools, which is very close to me, has a map of homework hotspots. So basically, these are all locations within the community that students could go to, and they publicize this on their website. Now, granted, not every student will be able to take advantage of this map because, for example, there might be students who don't have transportation. They might be watching students, or they might be watching siblings after school, things of that nature. However, putting this resource out in the community is a great start because it does help to solve the solution. There are also organizations that help to support the mission of getting everyone on, so low cost broadband. There are foundations through corporations such as the Sprint 1 Million Project. There are projects through Khajiit, which provides school buses with Wi-Fi on one future ready panel for digital learning day. And there was a superintendent who talked about how they worked with Khajiit to equip their school buses with Wi-Fi. It was a rural area, and the students often had like a 1 hour trip each way to and from school. So when they had the school bus Wi-Fi, as well as a homework monitor who rode the bus with them, then they were able to do their homework on the bus. So that was really cool. In addition, Albemarle County Public Schools, I always pronounce that wrong, but they actually created their own private LTE network. So they put an antenna on the top of a building, and it had an 8-mile radius, and it spread Wi-Fi to the community. So that was really cool. They also had solutions for school leaders, such as assembling a team and developing a shared vision, um, looking at your resources, your gaps and needs, engaging the stakeholders and partners, and developing and executing a project plan. So as I shared with you all, I co-wrote a book with Regina Schaefer and Dr. Nicole Howard, Closing the Gap. And one of my co-authors says here about when the shift from seeking resources to assist in teaching and learning became, there's one company that will be the tool and the resource. So her concern was that we would lose focus on a resource itself to assist in facilitating learning. So that was a very powerful quote. A lot of time we hear, don't use tech for tech's sake. So we need to be intentional when we are utilizing tech with our students. So that kind of brings us to the next section. So we started with devices and bandwidth, but now we are going to move to opportunities. Okay, so let me actually, I'm gonna go a little faster than anticipated, but okay. So the organization behind Future Ready is called the Alliance for Education and Education. Oh, I'm sorry, Alliance for Excellence in Education. And in 2016, and they talked about not just a homework gap, but opportunity gaps. And you'll see here their quote, but I bolded a few things that really stuck out. Like the opportunity gaps often come in the form of lowered expectations from adults and less access to effective teaching and rigorous coursework. The second thing that I bolded really, really stuck out to me, that access alone does not guarantee that students of all backgrounds and abilities have equal opportunities to learn. And that is an important point to drive home, because if we were to stop the discussion at just access to devices, access to bandwidth, and access to funding, how many times have you heard of organizations that will just throw money at a problem, and throw money at devices, bandwidth, things of that nature, but that's it, right? That's where it lands. That does not solve the problem by itself. We need to think about, what are we doing with this technology? And that kind of brings us to the topic of consuming versus producing. So these two words are not created equal, despite what the graphic shows. So there's not such a thing as balance. But a lot of times this comes to mind when we hear the debate about screen time. And we talk about, how much screen time is too much screen time. I know as a parent to a 3-year-old, and I'm constantly researching this myself. But as an educator, then I had settled on something that I had once heard, which was that the amount of screen time is not as important as what you're doing with the screen time. Are you just mindlessly consuming? Are you doom scrolling? I know I'm very guilty of that. Sometimes I'm on my phone on Facebook at like 3 a.m, just, going through different things. So are we mindlessly consuming, or are we producing? Like right now, for example, this webinar is producing. So that's not equal to me doom scrolling on Facebook. So that's just my perspective. You can feel free to share in the chat, how you view this debate versus of consuming versus producing. But it also ties into how we integrate tech in schools, because sometimes we see in a lot of cases that tech is purchased. We have these prepackaged programs that do a lot of drill and kill for our students that help them memorize different things. But that's not higher level blooms, right? That's not necessarily a way to make learning sticky. I'm not saying that there's no place for it, but I'm just saying if that's all we're doing, then we're missing the mark and we are selling our students short. So you got to think about who has access to create and to produce. Is it students that are only in tag programs? Is it students that are only in affluent districts? Does the zip code determine what the students are going to be able to do with tech? That's a question. Another question that we need to ask ourselves is, who exactly has access to higher track classes? So all of these things kind of come together under this section. And I want to give a shout out to Oakland Unified School District. Dr. Avril Goggins Smart had told me about this, the school district and what the OUSD, Office of Equity, does. And they have, when they're looking at who has access to higher track classes, then they have a database with student demographic, and they try to make the higher track classes as representative of their student demographics as possible. So they're trying to interrupt and eliminate inequitable practices, and to eliminate the correlation between social and cultural factors and probabilities of success. So they want to ensure representation. So I definitely salute them in their efforts to do this, and I wish that more schools, districts did the same. So all of that being said, how can we actually support students in their transformational learning opportunities? And one thing is to help students build networks. So I read about this and it just kind of struck me, because I was just like, wow, I had not really thought of this. But a lot of times we introduce students to guest speakers. We have them study up on different people, but helping them to build networks is definitely one thing that we're in position to do. So the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, you might know them as OECD, they define social capital in 3 different ways. So the first way was bonds, which is, if you think about 2 people, then a bond connection is someone like me, right? It might be someone in my family. It might be my close friend. It might be people who share my culture or ethnicity. Those would be bond connections. Now, the next connection are bridges. Those are links that stretch between a shared sense of identity. So one thing is, if I want to connect with someone who I don't have anything in common with, then I'm seeking to build a bridge connection. And the third one is the linkages. And the linkages are links to people or groups further up or lower down the social ladder. And in my opinion, I feel like linkages are really the underdeveloped of the three, for a lot of people, because a lot of times folks tend to connect across similar social economic status, across similar racial lines, across similar cultural lines, things of that nature. But groups of people who are further up or down the social ladder, then a lot of times folks are not able to make that connection. So one way that schools can help is by helping to build these bridges as well as these linkages with students. Okay, so Julia Freeland Fisher is a director of the Christensen Institute, and she argues that schools are in position to assist students in creating these inclusive networks, especially through bridges. So here is a little bit of what she had said, some suggestions for schools and districts, focusing on a network of care, also seeing the school system in terms of slots in which a student can learn. And that, to me, speaks of a more flexible schedule. Project-based learning is another thing that she said was big as well. Advisory, so expanding students' access to advisory. So instead of just bringing in a guest speaker, then perhaps connecting students to people in their industry. That would be something that could really help them along their way. And also exploring opportunities for change in school design. So this next one, this case that we're going to discuss really quickly, you may be familiar with. It came out around the time of this research. And this was a tragedy that happened on February 14th of 2018 at the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. So you may remember this. This was about 7 years ago at this point. But there was unfortunately a very tragic school shooting at this time, and 17 people lost their lives, and it was a very somber occasion. But in response to this tragedy, and excuse me, because I do get choked up when I think about this, but in response to this tragedy, students did not just take this as it is. They came together, they banded together, and they created this movement called the Never Again movement. They were fighting for change to prevent such incidents from ever happening again. And the students connected among themselves and also with other students across the United States, around the world. And they created this beautiful movement, as you can see in this picture. They had events and demonstrations with just hundreds of thousands of people represented. And that's just a testament to what students can do when we not get out of their way per se. Sometimes people say, get out of the student's way. I think that it's valuable for us to be there as mentors to support them, not to take over, but to amplify them, to support them and to give guidance, right? But to let them lead the way. That is the important thing. Okay. So just wanted to share a couple of examples of other students who have really stepped up that inspire me. The first one is Joshua Williams, who is the founder of an organization called Joshua's Heart. And let's see, I believe this is a video. So let me go ahead and play this for you, and he will tell you more about his story here.
When you think of Miami, you think of, rich, glamour, but 5 miles away from the beach, there's people who've never seen the beach. I was confused why somebody was in this situation, especially in America. So when I started Joshua's Heart Foundation, it was a key thing to be able to engage youth in the foundation, to help them participate. I think passing on the torch and lighting a new flame in another person to do good is probably one of the bigger missions that I have. So we are each making a bigger difference. that's it, just giving back and producing love for everybody.
All right, so that's Joshua. He continues to inspire me. He saw a need at a very young age. His family was there with him to support him and to make this happen. And he activated a network of other kids like him who wanted to help. So that is, to me, super inspiring. Now, the next story that I'll share with you is actually from the March for Our Lives. This was a standout young person. Naomi Wadler. She's from my hometown. And I'm not going to play the whole thing because I'm going to ugly cry, and we don't want that. But just wanted to share her voice and the power of her voice. And you'll probably feel it when this video is played. You got to go look at her speech if you have not seen it. Like, I promise you, it'll probably make you ugly cry. But just the power of this 11-year-old student, it's definitely felt, and her passion comes through in her words. And I just love generation. What are we on now? Generation. This was Gen Z, but now we're on Gen Alpha. So I'm excited to see what they're going to do. So one last quote to round off this section before we get into our finale. Chris Aviles, good friend of mine. One thing that I want to share about him is that when he was working with students, then he connected his students with organizations such as Slack. You might know Slack, the Slack that people use to communicate, businesses, all different kinds of things. So Slack was one of his students' clients. And he says, by sharing the great things students have done, you create the opportunity for someone to want to invest in your class. And that goes back to just empowering your students, amplifying your students. Okay. We don't have to get out of their way, but we have to support them and let them lead the way. So that's one last thing that I wanted to share about this particular section, about the opportunities. Now, the final section, we're going to actually turn and look at the educator in the mirror. And don't worry, I'm not going to karaoke on y'all, but you know that Michael Jackson song. So we're going to switch gears to just take a quick look in the mirror and look at high quality teaching. So all of our students need to have access to high quality teaching. That is definitely a part of digital equity. So I'm going to share a video with you all that I saw a few years back. And this was the very first deep fake I've ever seen. Just drop in the chat if you've ever heard of the word deep fake, or if this is new to you. But basically, a deep fake is when AI generates a video of someone. You use AI to generate a video, and you make it look like someone is doing something that they really didn't do. So this is now a thing, and it's been a thing for a lot longer than a lot of people realize. So this is the first deep fake that I've seen, and I'll share it with you all. Not the whole video, but just a bit, because we only have 15 minutes remaining, so I want to get through the rest. Right, that video. When I saw it, it terrified me, because I am from the era where we said, okay, you can't believe everything that you see in print. You can't believe everything you hear, because all of these things could be edited. But video never lies. Now, our kids are not growing up in this world. We're not living in this world anymore. That world is long gone. That video was actually from 2018. You could kind of tell that something was a little off, but now when you look at these videos, they are seamless and they are widely available. So this is the reality that we're living in. We as educators need to be knowledgeable about this reality so that we can better prepare our students to navigate it. So in the chat, feel free to drop if you've ever heard of SAMR or TPAC. And SAMR and TPAC, they are two models of technology integration. One that I became familiar with that I really love is called PICRAT. And PICRAT was introduced to me by a colleague, Kim Robertson, and she found this and brought it to our department. And what I really love about this is that instead of just looking at like one line of how technology is being integrated, then we have a matrix here. We look at what the teacher is doing with technology and what the students are doing with technology. So are they passive replacing, right? Like, for example, if I were to say, okay, kids, instead of copying dictionary definitions, then instead go online and look up what the definition of blah, blah, blah is and write that down, right? That would be passive replacing. You have passive amplifying, you have passive transform, okay? You have interactive, and you can see the different categories here. You have creative, right? And they are, you kind of have different levels of complexity. Down here, this is the least involved way to use, the least involved way to integrate technology. Now, there's a difference between technology use and technology integration. Technology use is like you're using tech, you're just using it for tech's sake. But technology integration is that it's embedded within the lesson. It's there for a purpose. In my office, then they also use the example of cupcake versus a Twinkie, right? And if you think of technology as the cream or the frosting or the filling or whatever, with the cupcake, you can scrape it off the top and you still have a cupcake. So that is more like technology use. But when you look at integration, if you look at the Twinkie, you can't get that cream out of the Twinkie without destroying the Twinkie. So technology integration is what we are looking into. And the goal is to get everybody to this creative transformative level. Now, not every lesson needs to be creative transformative where the students are creating and it's transforming the practice, but the goal is to get everybody capable of doing these creative transformative lessons when it comes to technology. So how do we do this? Well, there's a couple ways we can do it. For our pre-service teachers in teacher preparation programs, then one thing is to do ongoing integrated technology. Now, I came from alternative certification, so I had kind of a fast track. But when I speak to my colleagues, then, and I ask them how many tech courses they had, right? They usually say like one standalone tech course. But the goal would be to have technology embedded into teacher preparation programs. We learn by doing, right? So that is one thing for teacher prep programs to consider. And another thing is to embed culturally relevant pedagogy, or culturally sustaining pedagogy, ideally both. So there's a difference. A lot of people have heard of culturally relevant pedagogy, and that is by Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings. And what it implies is that teachers should be representative of all cultures. Students should see themselves reflected in the curriculum and in the materials. And that is extremely important. Another thing that came to pass in 2012 is that Dr. Paris coined the term culturally sustaining pedagogy, where the teacher takes a more active role in bolstering students' cultural identity while navigating the dominant culture. Okay. So that is something like when we are encouraging students to be proud of who they are, and they can they can definitely bring in elements of their culture. You don't have to be an expert on every single culture under the sun or every single language under the sun, but creating space for students to be who they are. Again, culturally relevant pedagogy is having the materials that reflect their identity. You might have heard of Windows, Mirrors, and Doors by Dr. Rudine, Sims Bishop. I always mix up the last names. I think Bishop comes last, so my apologies. But Windows, Mirrors, and Doors, if you look into that concept, that kind of falls under that culturally relevant pedagogy. Culturally sustaining pedagogy would be taking it a step further and allowing space for students to be who they are and to share that, okay? So those are two things to keep in mind. Now, another thing that I want to share with you all, because this is teacher preparation programs, but what about those educators that are in service? There's also ways that we can help prepare our in-service educators, and one of them that I want to share with you all is through the Connect framework, okay? So Connect framework is something that we coined in my organization, EduMatch. We're going to tell you a little bit about that in just a second, but it's a framework for professional learning and really all learning. So I'll share that with you in just a second. But EduMatch, just a little more about EduMatch. It's an organization that addresses the problem of educator isolation by creating spaces for deep connection and collaborative growth so that educators can feel a sense of belonging and continually strive to master their craft. So we've worked with nearly 100 school districts across the United States and in Canada since 2020, and we partner with organizations such as Adobe, Book Creator, and Google, and many more. So that's a little bit about us, but just to share with you our framework, this is our Connect framework. And the reason that the word Connect is in there is because EduMatch by nature is very community organized and very community driven. And that actually goes to the very first pillar of the Connect framework, which is community. So creating relationships among and between participants in professional learning. And also, you know, when we're talking about equity, then co-creating with the people who are most impacted. The ongoing, so embedding this work into professional learning systems. In addition, the needs-based. So we need to design systems that are rooted in context. Look at where we currently are and see how we can get to where we want to be. Going along with that, the navigable, building the user-friendly systems for everyone so that everyone involved can help support equity. Engaging, that involves designing for curiosity, for joy, and belonging. So, you know, there's definitely a difference between sit and get and interactivity. So having that engaging component. Also, culturally responsive. We want to affirm people's identities, not erase them. So going back to that culturally responsive pedagogy, culturally sustaining pedagogy, even in professional learning, it is important to be culturally responsive. And the last thing is transformative in terms of going from simply accessing through our digital equity efforts, to accessing the bandwidth, the devices, things of that nature, to agency. So empowering people, empowering all of our constituents within our school, our district, our community. So go ahead and share in the chat whatever letter resonated most with you. And just to recap, this is not linear, it is layered. So each piece of Connect supports the others. And if you miss one, the structure weakens. So this is your roadmap. You, by being here, by watching this, you're showing that you already have the heart, you already have the interest. So if you would like, then EduMatch can help you to build the structure. So I'm going to drop a link right there. In case you want to connect with us, then we can help you with this. We have resources, materials, we have courses, we have professional learning series, and we have train-the-trainer programs on equity, but also on several other things such as artificial intelligence, leadership, social emotional learning, you name it, right? So just reach out to us with whatever problem that you may be facing, and we will be here to help support you. So with all that being said, we just talked about some ways to become high quality educators, but we cannot do it in isolation. We need one another. We need a network. You are not alone. It takes all of us to support digital equity. And the cost of inaction is way too high, because if we just wait to let this all blow over, then we're subject to widening gaps, lost potential of our students, and silenced voices. So the time to act is now. Even, like I said, I've been talking about this since about 2017, maybe even before that. But in 2025, just with the way that society is going, then this is urgent. This is time that we need to come together and we need to act to solve this problem. So with that being said, just a few wise words I wanted to share by my brother, my good friend, Dr. Josue Fales, who closed out one of the digital equity books in our series. He was saying that each of us can play a role. So each district leader can identify district disparities or inequities. Each school leader can model the integration of technology. And each classroom teacher can begin connecting their students to sources outside of the classroom. All right, so we have about 3 minutes left. I just wanted to share 3 things with you very quickly. So the first one, if you wanted to discuss if there's any way that I or EduMatch can help support you in your journey, then you can visit bit.ly/edumatch-inquiry-form. Second thing, would love to get your feedback on this talk or any other talks that you see me do. So you can just go to the link, talk.ac/edumatch, and the code is Sarah. So you can fill out the survey. And then once you do so, you'll receive a PDF with more information on EduMatch. even including book studies. Like that's one other thing that we do. We have published books, including Doc Desiree's book. So definitely check that out. She has a great book on SLLA prep. So you'll receive more information about everything that EduMatch has in store. And last but not least, I just wanted to invite you to connect to the Softer Life for Educators. So this is a side project of EduMatch that just started up. So if you join now, you're just in the infancy. And it's a community that prioritizes the needs of the whole educator. So maybe you've been feeling disconnected from the work. Maybe you've been feeling burnt out, stressed out, things of that nature, and you just want a place to reconnect. Maybe back in the day you were, heavy on Twitter or some of the PLNs, and you've seen that now there's been a fragmentation and people are just kind of everywhere. So there is this community here. We have a 7-day free trial for you. Not only is there community there, but there's also courses where you can go and learn about how to level up both inside of work and outside of work. So including things like artificial intelligence, there are courses on that. There's courses on, again, things outside of work, such as investing. And we have a challenge going on right now too. So there's challenges on investing, wellness, fitness, all of those different things. So it is there for us to all come together and to live a better life, to live a softer life, because life doesn't have to be so hard. So you can access that 7-day free trial, and the link is there for you, school.com/softer life. All right, everybody. So that is it for me. I just wanted to thank you all so much for your time and for your attention. If you want to connect with me, then I'm on most social media at Sarah the Teacher, as you can see it right there. So thank you to Dr. Desiree, and thank you to everybody watching.
Thank you so much. This is so needed, especially in our current environment. I appreciate you bringing the topic. The topic's been, relevant since the beginning, way before it became popular, I would say. And then now that it's dropping out of popularity, we still need to fight and we still need to speak about it, and still have those conversations. So thank you so much for being vulnerable, for being realistic, for including the videos that really give you a different perspective on it. Just thank you for everything.
Thank you so much, Dr. Desiree. It was great to be here and to connect with you and to connect with everyone here.